The body in the canal, how DNA identified Velma Lee Silva after 12 years. Before we dive in, kindly hit the subscribe button and let us know where you are watching from in the comment. The water was still that morning. Too still. A soft mist rolled across the canal, carrying with it the sharp scent of decay. A fisherman, just after dawn, stood on the edge of the bridge near Waco, Texas. He'd been there 100 times before, but today felt different. Something floated in the water. First, he thought it was debris, maybe a log, maybe an animal. But as the current turned the shape over, his heart stopped. It wasn't a log. It was human. He froze. His fishing pole dropped into the dirt. The sound of water slapping against the canal walls echoed in his ears. For a moment, the world was silent. Then he ran. Within an hour, the police arrived. Sirens cut through the early morning quiet, bouncing off the water like broken glass. Detective Raymond Hargrove pulled up in an old Crown Vic, coffee steaming in one hand, notebook in the other. He'd been with the department for 17 years. He'd seen things he could never forget. But even he paused when he saw what was in the water. The body was tangled in reeds. The current had carried it against the concrete edge of the canal, pinning it there like something trapped between life and death. Female, naked, decomposed, no ID, no purse, no phone, nothing. The medical examiner would later estimate the body had been there for days, maybe longer. The face was gone. The hands were missing. The water had done its work. It was a nightmare. News spread fast. By afternoon, the scene was swarming with officers, cameras, and curious onlookers. Waco wasn't a city untouched by crime, but this was different. The way the body had been stripped, dumped, and left in that lonely canal told detectives one thing. Someone wanted this woman to vanish. But there was always a trace, always something left behind. Detective Hargrove watched as the medical team lifted the remains onto a stretcher. A single gold chain hung tangled in the woman's hair. He noticed it immediately. "Bag that," he said quietly. "That might be all we've got." The forensic team nodded. The body was taken to the county morgue. The smell clung to the air long after the van disappeared down the road. For most people in Waco, life went on. But for the detectives, it was the beginning of something that would haunt them for years. Inside the morgue, the fluorescent lights buzzed like flies. Dr. Karen Boyd, the medical examiner, stood over the body. She was meticulous, clinical, but her eyes betrayed something else. Sadness. The woman on her table wasn't just another case. She was someone's daughter, someone's friend. Boyd took samples, tissue, hair, teeth, but there wasn't much left to work with. The water had washed away nearly everything. "Any chance we can get prints?" asked a young technician. Boyd shook her head. "No hands." "What about dental?" "Maybe," she said, "if she's in the system." But she wasn't. Days passed. Leads went cold. Posters went up. Local news covered the canal body mystery, as they called it. Yet no one came forward. No missing person matched the description. No family called to ask if it might be their loved one. It was as if the woman had never existed. Detective Hargrove couldn't shake it. The way her body had been dumped, the precision, the distance from town. It didn't feel random. It felt planned. He visited the canal again a week later. The water had returned to its calm, murky rhythm. A few fishing lines hung from the bridge, swaying in the wind. He lit a cigarette, staring down into the water. "Who are you?" he whispered. No answer, only the soft ripple of current. Back at the station, the case file began to gather dust. They labeled her Jane Doe number 1178. Age, unknown. Race, possibly Hispanic or Native American. Cause of death, undetermined. Months turned into years. Detectives retired. Files were moved. Evidence boxes stacked on shelves. The city changed. People forgot. But not everyone. In 2008, 12 years after that morning on the canal, Detective Erin Walker reopened the case. She was new to homicide, sharp, relentless, and obsessed with the ones that never found closure. When she stumbled across Jane Doe number 1178, something about it drew her in. The old photos made her stomach twist. The blurred image of the body half submerged in brown water. The gold chain, the evidence tag faded from years of neglect. She wanted to know who this woman was. Walker requested the remaining evidence from storage. The chain, the fabric remnants, the bone samples. She ordered everything to the state lab. The clerk frowned. That case? It's ancient. You really think there's anything left to test? Walker smiled. You'd be surprised what DNA can do now. Technology had come a long way since 1996. Back then, DNA testing was slow, unreliable, and often useless in cases like this. But by 2008, everything had changed. Labs could extract profiles from a single hair strand, from bone, even degraded samples. Walker met with forensic analyst Denise Harper, a veteran who'd seen miracles happen under a microscope. Harper examined the samples like treasure. We might get something, she said. It's going to take time. Weeks passed, then months. Walker waited. She dug through old missing person reports. Women who'd disappeared around the mid-90s. None seemed to fit, until one night she stumbled on a file. Velma Lee Silva, a 33-year-old mother from Waco who vanished in 1996. Reported missing by her brother. Case never solved. The description matched almost perfectly. Height, build, jewelry, even the gold chain. Walker's pulse quickened. She cross-referenced the dates. Velma disappeared in March. The body was found in April. To fit, she called the lab. Run the DNA. Compare it to Silva's brother. I think we found our Jane Doe. Weeks later, a phone call changed everything. Walker sat at her desk, surrounded by cold case files and empty coffee cups. When the call came, she knew before she even picked up. Harper's voice crackled through the line. Aaron, we got a match. Walker stood. You're sure? 100%. The remains in the canal, they're Velma Lee Silva. 12 years. 12 long years. The woman in the water finally had a name. Velma's brother, Samuel Silva, broke down when he got the news. He'd never stopped looking, never stopped hoping. He told reporters later, all those years, I prayed someone would find her. Now at least we know. Now we can bring her home. But for Detective Walker, this wasn't closure. It was just the beginning, because now she had to find out what really happened. Velma had vanished on an ordinary day. A warm afternoon in March 1996. She'd left home to visit a friend. She never came back. Her car was found abandoned near a park. The door unlocked. Purse missing. No sign of struggle. Her friends told police she'd been worried lately. Said someone had been watching her. At first, no one took it seriously. People disappear all the time. But now, years later, with her body identified, every little detail suddenly mattered. Walker began to reconstruct her last hours. Where did Velma go that day? Who was she meeting? And who had the power to make her vanish for over a decade without leaving a trace? The more Walker dug, the darker it got. Velma wasn't just a random victim. She'd been involved with someone dangerous. Velma Lee Silva, a name once forgotten. Now it echoed through the halls of the Waco Police Department like a ghost demanding justice. Detective Aaron Walker stared at the faded photo of Velma, smiling, full of life, holding a small child in her arms. A daughter, maybe 5 years old. The kind of photo that shouldn't belong in a murder file. Velma had been more than a name on a report. She'd been a mother, a sister, a friend. So why had she ended up in that canal? Walker pinned Velma's photo on the board beside a map of Waco. A red string stretched from the last place she was seen, a small neighborhood near South 11th Street, to the canal where her body was found. 12 miles apart. 12 miles between life and death. The 1996 police report was thin, too thin. Velma was reported missing on March 10th by her brother, Samuel. She'd left home that afternoon around 4 p.m., told her daughter she'd be back before dark. She never came back. Her car, a light blue Buick, was found 2 days later, parked crooked along a dirt road near Brazos Park. The keys were missing. There were no fingerprints, no signs of struggle. Just one clue, a smudge of blood on the driver's seat. Back then, there wasn't much detectives could do with a few drops of blood. No DNA database, no match, nothing. The case went cold. Until now. Walker leaned back in her chair, rereading the report. Something about the car bothered her. Why abandon it there? That road wasn't random. It was quiet, surrounded by trees. Whoever left it there didn't want to be seen. She grabbed her keys. Sometimes the best way to find answers was to walk where it happened. The road hadn't changed much in 12 years. Still narrow, still silent. Walker parked where the Buick had been found. The air was thick with the smell of rain and dirt. Cicadas hummed in the trees. She pictured Velma behind the wheel, scared, looking over her shoulder. Maybe she saw someone following her. Maybe she stopped to talk. Maybe she never had a chance to run. Walker crouched near the ditch. Grass had grown tall, but she could still imagine the tire tracks, the footprints, the chaos. She whispered to herself, "Why here, Velma?" A truck rolled by, breaking her thoughts. The driver slowed, giving her a curious glance before continuing down the road. That's when she noticed it. A small church across the street. Old, white, quiet. The kind of place that saw everything but said nothing. Inside, a janitor was sweeping the floor. Walker showed her badge. Detective Walker, Waco PD. You were here in the 90s. The old man squinted. Yeah, been here all my life. She showed him Velma's photo. Do you remember her? His eyes softened. Velma Silva. Yeah, sweet girl. Used to come around sometimes. Helped with food drives. Walker's heart picked up. Did she come here often before she disappeared? He nodded. Now and then, but she stopped coming toward the end. Said she was scared. Scared of what? He hesitated. Not what. Who? Walker leaned in. Who was she afraid of? He looked down, fidgeting with his broom. There was a man. Came around a few times. Said he was her boyfriend, but I didn't like the look of him. Rough type. Always watching her. You could feel the tension. Do you remember his name? He shook his head. No, but he drove a red pickup. The kind that rattled when it idled. Walker's stomach twisted. A red pickup. That matched a vehicle seen near the Canal in the 1996 reports. An unidentified truck spotted by two teenagers fishing that morning. Back then, it was dismissed. Just another passing car. But now it meant something. Walker went back to the station, her mind racing. She opened the old evidence folder. Inside was a single blurry photo taken near the canal. In the background, half obscured by trees, was a red truck. Coincidence? Or connection? She pulled up DMV records from the 90s, cross-referencing every red pickup registered in McLennan County. Dozens of names appeared, but one stood out. Thomas Tommy Ray Belden. Convicted of assault in 1993. Domestic violence charge in 1995. Lived less than 5 miles from Velma's home. And then, mysteriously, he moved away in 1997. Right after the body was found. Walker's pulse quickened. She dug through archived files. And there it was, an old police report from 1996. Velma had filed a complaint against a man named Tommy Belden for harassment. She said he wouldn't leave her alone. Said he threatened to make her disappear if she talked to anyone. The report had gone nowhere. No follow-up. No arrest. And now Velma was dead. Walker called Velma's brother, Samuel. He picked up on the first ring. His voice was tired, worn from years of waiting. Mr. Silva, it's Detective Walker. I think I found something. Do you remember a man named Tommy Belden? Silence. Then a deep exhale. Yeah, Samuel said quietly. Velma dated him for a while, but it got bad. Real bad. How bad? He was jealous, controlling, wouldn't let her go anywhere without him. One night she came to my house crying. Said he hit her. I told her to call the cops. She did, but they never did anything. Do you think he could have killed her? Samuel paused. I think he swore he would. Walker's next stop was Belden's last known address. A small house outside Waco, overgrown with weeds. The new tenant answered the door, a middle-aged woman in an apron. "Tommy Belden?" Walker asked. "Lived here years ago," the woman said. "Left in a hurry. I remember, 'cause the landlord had to clean the place out." "Do you remember where he went?" "Somewhere in Louisiana, I think. Had family there." Walker handed her a card. "If you remember anything else, call me." As she turned to leave, the woman said something that made her stop. "Oh, there was one weird thing. He left behind a metal box. The landlord gave it to the trash guys, but I peeked inside first. It had a necklace in it. Gold. Broken." Walker froze. "What kind of necklace?" The woman thought for a moment. "Looked like a chain with a heart on it." "Why?" Walker didn't answer. She didn't have to. It was Velma's. That night, Walker sat in her car, staring at the canal under the pale moonlight. She could feel Velma's story pressing down on her. The injustice, the silence, the fear. Tommy Belden had vanished after Velma's death. The body had been dumped near a spot only locals knew. And that gold chain, the one recovered from the water, might have been taken as a trophy. Every sign pointed to him. But there was one problem. No physical evidence. DNA from 1996 was degraded. There were no fingerprints, no witnesses, and no murder weapon. If Belden killed Velma, proving it now, 12 years later, would be nearly impossible. Unless Walker decided to push harder. She tracked Belden through DMV databases, court filings, employment records. Finally, she found him, living in Shreveport, Louisiana, working as a mechanic. No criminal record since '97. She printed his file, closed her eyes, and took a deep breath. The case had slept long enough. She picked up the phone and called Shreveport PD. "This is Detective Walker, Waco homicide. I need to confirm a location on a suspect in a cold case. His name is Thomas Ray Belden. He may be connected to a 1996 homicide." The officer on the other end asked, "You think he killed that woman they found in your canal?" Walker's voice was calm, but cold. "I don't think. I know." As the sun rose the next morning, Walker packed her things for the drive to Louisiana. Before she left, she stopped by the morgue one last time. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. The road to Shreveport felt endless. Rain fell in sheets, blurring the headlights. Wind pushed against the car as Detective Erin Walker tightened her grip on the wheel. Velma Lee Silva's face haunted the windshield like a reflection. That smile, those eyes, 12 years of silence, and now, finally, a name to chase. Thomas Ray Belden. Walker repeated it in her mind like a curse. She knew men like him, charming to outsiders, monster behind closed doors, the kind who hurt, then pretended they didn't. When she arrived in Shreveport, the city felt soaked in secrets. Old brick buildings, faded neon signs, a kind of sadness that clung to everything. She pulled into a gas station, the rain still falling. The clerk, an older man with tired eyes, nodded as she showed him the photo of Belden. "You seen this man?" she asked. The clerk squinted. "Yeah, works over at a garage off 7th Street. Fixes cars. Keeps to himself." Walker's pulse jumped. "You know if he's there today?" "Usually opens early. Don't talk much though." "Thanks." She left $1 on the counter and drove. The garage sat behind a line of warehouses. Flickering lights. The smell of oil and gasoline. A dog barked behind a fence. Deep, angry. Walker parked a block away, watching. A man stepped out of the garage. Tall, broad shoulders, graying beard. He lit a cigarette and leaned against the wall. It was him, Tommy Belden, 12 years older, but unmistakable. He exhaled smoke, looked out across the lot, and for a moment, she saw no guilt, no worry. Just a man who believed the past was buried. He had no idea she was there to dig it up. Walker didn't move right away. She knew the rules, don't spook a suspect. But patience wasn't easy when she could almost feel Velma beside her. Finally, she stepped out of the car. Her boots splashed through puddles. Belden turned as she approached. His eyes narrowed. "Can I help you?" he asked. "Thomas Ray Belden?" He nodded slowly. "Who's asking?" "Detective Aaron Walker, Waco Police Department." He froze. "Waco?" "Yes, I'm reopening a cold case. A woman named Velma Lee Silva." The name hit him like a hammer. His cigarette trembled. "Never heard of her," he said. Walker tilted her head. "That's funny. She filed a police report against you in 1996. Said you threatened her." He swallowed, looked away. "That was a long time ago. Don't know what you're talking about." Walker stared, unblinking. "You left Waco a few weeks after her body was found. That's quite a coincidence." He laughed. "Body? I didn't kill nobody. You can't just come here and accuse me of something like that." "Then why did you run?" "Because Waco's a dump," he snapped. "And because I don't owe anybody there a damn thing." Walker's voice stayed calm. "Velma thought you owed her life." Belden glared. "You should leave, detective, before I call my lawyer." She leaned closer. "Do that, but I'll be back with a warrant." That night, Walker couldn't sleep. Her motel room felt too quiet. The air conditioner buzzed like a whisper. She stared at the ceiling, thinking about Belden's eyes. The flicker of fear, the defensive anger. He was hiding something. She could feel it, but she needed proof. Without DNA, all she had was instinct. And in a cold case, instinct wasn't enough. She turned on her laptop and began searching archives again. Old reports, crime scene photos, notes from forensic teams. And that's when she found it. A small entry buried in the evidence log. Hair strand recovered from victim's clothing. Insufficient for testing, 1996. Her heart started racing. Back then, DNA testing had been primitive. Now, could be enough to identify a killer. She emailed the Waco Forensics Lab. Subject: Urgent, reopen hair evidence / Velma Lee Silva. The next morning, she returned to the garage. This time, she wasn't alone. 2 Shreveport officers stood beside her. Belden was under surveillance now. His phone pinged to the same locations daily: work, home, a local bar. Predictable. That made him easier to trap. Walker waited across the street, watching through rain-specked glass. Belden moved like a man without guilt. He laughed with customers, changed tires, took calls. But when he looked up, she saw it. A flicker. That same fear. He knew she wasn't gone. Hours passed. Then her phone buzzed. A message from the Waco lab. Hair sample recovered, viable. DNA extraction successful. Comparison pending. Walker's chest tightened. If the DNA matched Belden, she'd have her killer. If it didn't, the trail might go cold forever. She closed her eyes, whispering, "Come on, Velma. Help me out here." By evening, Walker followed Belden to a small bar on the edge of town. Murphy's. The neon sign read. Inside, smoke hung thick. Country music hummed from a jukebox. Belden sat alone in a corner booth. Walker slipped into a seat near the bar, watching him in the mirror. He drank slowly, tapping his fingers against the glass. Then his phone rang. He answered. "Yeah. No, I told you I ain't talking about Waco no more. Drop it." Walker froze. Who was he talking to? He hung up, finished his drink, and left a tip on the table. She followed him outside. The rain had stopped. The night air was heavy. "Tommy," she called. He turned. "You again. I told you I'd be back." He sighed. "You just don't quit, do you? Not when a woman's body ends up in a canal." He smirked. Maybe she deserved it. Walker's blood ran cold. "What did you say?" "Nothing," he said quickly, looking away. "Just talking." "No, you said she deserved it." He lit another cigarette. "You ever think some people bring bad things on themselves?" Walker stepped closer. "You're talking about Velma." He shrugged. "Believe what you want." The next morning, the DNA results came in. Walker opened the email with shaking hands. Partial match confirmed. DNA on victim's clothing linked to Thomas Ray Belden. Her heart pounded. It wasn't a full profile, but it was enough. She forwarded the results to the Shreveport PD captain. Within hours, a warrant was signed. When they arrested Belden, he didn't fight, didn't yell, didn't run. He just stared at Walker, calm and unreadable. "You can't prove nothing," he said. She looked him dead in the eyes. "You'd be surprised what 12 years of silence can say." At the station, Belden sat in the interrogation room, motionless, cuffed, watching the clock. Walker entered carrying a folder. She didn't sit. "Tommy, you want to tell me what happened that night?" He didn't answer. "You followed Velma. You argued. She tried to leave. You hit her, didn't you?" He laughed under his breath. "You got no idea what you're talking about. We found your DNA on her clothes." That wiped the smirk off his face. She kept going. "We found your old truck in an impound lot. Blood on the passenger seat. You dumped it and disappeared." His jaw clenched. "You were angry because she left you. She wanted a new life. You couldn't let her go." He stared at the table, his voice low. "She said she was gonna ruin me, take everything. You don't understand. She made me crazy." Walker's breath caught. "So you killed her?" Silence. Then he looked up, eyes full of fury. "She shouldn't have run," Walker whispered. "And you shouldn't have followed." Hours later, the confession was signed. He admitted to striking Velma during an argument, claimed it was an accident. But when she didn't wake up, he panicked. He drove to the canal, dumped her body, and vanished before sunrise. Walker listened as he spoke. Cold, detached, as if it had happened to someone else. The year was 2014. In a small, windowless office inside the Texas Department of Public Safety Crime Lab, a hum of fluorescent lights filled the silence. Machines clicked. Refrigerated drawers hissed softly. Inside one of those drawers lay a sample, a tiny fragment of bone, weathered and forgotten. It had been pulled from the canal back in 2002, labeled Jane Doe number 247. No one had looked at it in years, but tonight that would change. A forensic analyst named Dr. Erin Morales was running a late shift. She sipped her stale coffee, scanning through old evidence logs when she saw the tag, "Female Remains, Bryan, Texas, Case Unsolved." She paused. Something tugged at her. Her department had recently gained access to a new forensic database, one that could cross-reference familial DNA matches from criminal and genealogical archives. It was revolutionary technology, the same kind that cracked cases decades cold. Erin leaned back in her chair. She thought of all the families waiting, the mothers still checking their phones, the fathers still pacing empty porches. She made a decision. She would reopen Jane Doe number 247. Meanwhile, miles away in Temple, Texas, an older woman named Maria Silva sat by her window. Her hands trembled as she held a photo. A young woman with a crooked smile, her hair blowing across her face. "Velma," she whispered. 12 years had passed. 12 birthdays missed. 12 Christmases with one empty chair. The police had stopped calling years ago. Leads went nowhere. People forgot. But Maria never did. She talked to Velma every morning, set a cup of coffee by her photo, prayed, waited, and somehow, she felt like her daughter's voice was whispering back. At the lab, Erin swabbed a small piece of bone. She prepared the extraction, carefully breaking it down into a genetic sample. She placed it into the sequencer and typed the label, Specimen 247, unknown female, Bryan Canal, 2002. The hum of the machine filled the air. Minutes passed, then hours. Each beep, each flicker of the monitor felt like a heartbeat. Finally, results began to appear. Partial DNA profile. Enough to compare. Erin uploaded it to the CODIS system, the National DNA Database. But as expected, no direct match. She frowned. That's where the old systems usually stopped. But Erin wasn't using the old systems. She was using forensic genealogy, a brand new method connecting DNA to public genealogy networks. It wasn't about finding the person. It was about finding the family. She uploaded the genetic code into the database and waited. Hours later, a name blinked onto the screen. Not the victim's name, but a possible second cousin. The system traced branches of the family tree across counties, states, generations. Slowly, the web of names began to form. Silva, Ramos, Delgado. Her eyes widened. Silva. She cross-checked missing persons reports. There it was, Velma Lee Silva, reported missing from Temple, Texas, in 2002. The timelines matched. The age matched. Even the height. Aaron's breath hitched. Could it be her? The next morning, Maria Silva got a knock on her door. When she opened it, 2 investigators stood outside. Behind them, a woman in a white coat holding a manila folder. "Mrs. Silva," the detective said gently, "we think we may have found your daughter." Maria froze. Her throat went dry. "Found Velma?" she whispered. "Yes, ma'am." The air hung heavy. They asked for a DNA sample, just a simple cheek swab. Maria agreed instantly, her hands shaking as she signed the consent form. When they left, she sat on her couch in silence. Her heart raced. She'd prayed for this day for 12 long years. But she wasn't sure she was ready for the answer. Back in the lab, Aaron compared Maria's DNA to the sample from the Canal. The computer processed. Lines of data streamed across the monitor. Then one word flashed on the screen in bright green letters. Match. Aaron sat back, covering her mouth. After 12 years, Jane Doe number 247 finally had a name. Velma Lee Silva. News spread quickly through Brazos County. DNA identifies body found in Bryan Canal as woman missing since 2002. Reporters swarmed. TV vans lined the street. But Maria didn't care about cameras. She cared about one thing: her daughter was finally found. She could bring her home. She could give her peace. And maybe she thought she could sleep again. Detective Tom Whitaker, now gray-haired and semi-retired, reopened the old files. He remembered the night Velma vanished. The car left near the highway, the shoes by the canal, the sense that something darker had happened. Now, with her identity confirmed, they could finally hunt for her killer again. But the more Tom dug, the more tangled it became. Velma's last known contact? A man named Jason Red Hall, a local laborer with a history of violence. He'd been questioned back then but released. No evidence, no body, no charge. But now, with DNA and new forensic tools, Tom wanted to revisit everything. He pulled Jason's old record. Assault. Drunk and disorderly. Suspicion of domestic abuse. He'd skipped town shortly after Velma disappeared. Coincidence? Maybe. But Tom didn't believe in coincidences. Meanwhile, Aaron was asked to testify for a local press briefing. Reporters asked how she solved it. She simply said, "I didn't. Science did. Time did. And a mother's hope did." In Maria's small home, the day of Velma's funeral came. A soft rain fell as the casket was lowered into the ground. Dozens gathered, friends, neighbors, church members. Maria stood beside the grave, clutching the same photo she'd held for years. "She's home," she whispered. "She's home." But as the service ended and people began to leave, Detective Whitaker lingered. He stared at the gravestone. Something about this didn't sit right. The evidence was thin. No clear cause of death had ever been determined. And there were whispers, stories about what might have really happened in that canal. He made a quiet vow. He wouldn't stop. Not this time. Because the DNA had given Velma a name, but not her justice. That night, Tom returned to his office. The rain pounded against the windows. He pulled up old photos of the canal. The tangled weeds, the murky water, the half-sunken debris. Something about one image caught his attention. It showed the edge of a tire track, not from a car, from something larger. He enlarged it. A truck tire, deeply grooved, industrial. Jason Hall had driven a construction truck for years. Tom's pulse quickened. He opened another file, Jason's work logs. The dates lined up. Jason had been working near Bryan that same week Velma disappeared. The detective sat back in his chair, rain streaking down the glass. After 12 years, the truth was stirring again. The body in the canal finally had a name. But now it was time to find out who put her there. And as Tom would soon learn, some secrets buried in water don't stay silent forever. The rain had stopped, but the air still felt heavy. thick with the kind of silence that only comes before a storm breaks again. Detective Tom Whitaker sat alone in his office, staring at the crime board. Photos of Velma Lee Silva filled the wall, her smiling face, the canal, the coroner's notes, the word match printed in bold above the DNA report. He took a deep breath and whispered to himself, "All right, Velma, let's finish this." He started with Jason Red Hall. The man had vanished from Texas around the same time Velma did. Rumors said he'd moved to Louisiana, maybe even Florida. He'd worked odd construction jobs, cash only, no trail. Tom had seen this before. Men like Jason didn't just disappear. They hid. He requested a warrant to reopen Jason's file, bank records, family connections, social media. But Jason wasn't on Facebook, Instagram, or anywhere, almost like he'd erased himself. Then a break came from an unlikely source, a phone call from a woman in Shreveport, Louisiana. "I heard you're looking for Jason Hall," she said. Her voice was rough, tired. "I used to date him. You need to know something." Her name was Tricia Monroe. She told Tom that Jason went by another name now, Rick Harlan. He'd been living under that alias for years, worked as a heavy equipment operator, still drank too much, still had that mean streak. But one night, she said, he got drunk and started talking about a woman who wouldn't shut up. Tricia had brushed it off at first, but then Jason said something that made her blood run cold. "She kept screaming when I pushed her down by the canal," he'd said, laughing. "So I made her quiet." Tricia broke down crying on the phone. She didn't know what it meant back then, but after she saw the story about Velma's body being identified, everything clicked. Tom's pulse hammered. He thanked her and asked for an address. 2 days later, Tom and a team of marshals drove out to a rundown trailer park on the outskirts of Shreveport. The air smelled like oil and rain-soaked dirt. Jason Hall, or Rick Harlan, was sitting on his porch, a beer in hand, staring at nothing. His hair was gray now, his face hard and weathered. When the unmarked cars pulled up, his eyes narrowed. "Morning, Jason," Tom said, stepping forward. "Don't know any Jason," the man grunted. "Yeah," Tom said quietly. "You do." Jason stood up slowly, his hand twitching toward his pocket. "Hands where I can see them," the marshal barked. Jason froze. Tom approached, holding a photo of Velma's driver's license. "You remember her?" Tom asked. Jason didn't answer, but his eyes flicked toward the photo for just a second too long. Tom saw it, the guilt, the recognition, and that was enough. At the station, Jason barely spoke. He sat in the metal chair, tapping his fingers on the table. Tom placed a file in front of him. Inside, photos of the canal, the DNA report, and a picture of Maria Silva at her daughter's funeral. "You did this," Tom said. "You took her life. You left her there like trash." Jason smirked. "You don't got proof." Tom leaned forward. "We've got your words." He slid a small recorder across the table, the call from Tricia Monroe. Jason's smirk faltered. "She's lying," he muttered. "Then you won't mind a DNA test," Tom said. They took the sample. Hours later, the lab called. A match. Jason's DNA was found on Velma's clothing fibers, preserved in evidence storage for over a decade. It was over. Tom stared at the result, feeling both relief and rage twist in his gut. He'd finally done it. He'd kept his promise. The news broke that evening. Cold case solved. Man arrested in 2002 murder of Velma Lee Silva. Across Texas, people talked. For the Silva family, it was closure. For the community, it was shock. Maria Silva wept as she watched the coverage. "Thank you," she whispered to the TV. "Thank you for not forgetting her." But for Tom, the case didn't end there. He wanted to know why. He wanted Jason to say the words. So he returned to the interrogation room one last time. Jason sat handcuffed, staring at the wall. Tom closed the door behind him. "Why'd you do it?" Jason let out a slow, bitter laugh. "She was drunk," he said. "We were hanging out by the canal. She started talking about her kid, about how I didn't treat her right. Said she was gonna call the cops. Said she'd ruin me." He looked up at Tom, his eyes dark and empty. I just snapped. Tom's jaw tightened. You strangled her. Jason shrugged. It was an accident. She fell. I panicked. Tom leaned in close. You didn't panic. You dumped her body in a canal and drove away. That's not panic. That's murder. Jason looked away. Call it what you want. When the trial came months later, the courtroom was packed. Maria sat in the front row clutching her daughter's photo. Aaron Morales, the forensic analyst, testified about the DNA. Tom took the stand too calm, precise, unflinching. Jason's defense tried to argue it was manslaughter, but the jury didn't buy it. After 3 hours of deliberation, the foreman stood and read the verdict aloud. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty of murder in the first degree. Maria gasped. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Tom exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. Justice had finally spoken. Afterward, Tom visited Maria at her home. She opened the door before he could knock. Detective Whitaker, she said softly. I don't have words. Tom shook his head. You don't need to. She's home now. That's what matters. Maria smiled weakly. Thank you for not giving up on her. He nodded. I couldn't. Before he left, Maria handed him a small framed photo. Velma holding a little girl. That's my granddaughter, she said. She was 2 when her mama went missing. She's 14 now. She wants to meet you. Tom swallowed hard. I'd like that. That night, as Tom drove home, he passed the same canal where it all began. The water was calm now. The moon reflected off it like glass. He pulled over and got out, walking to the edge. The sound of frogs echoed in the distance. He stood there for a long time, thinking about Velma, about Maria, about the years lost to silence. He picked up a single white lily and set it on the water. For you, he whispered. It drifted away slowly, carried by the current. Months later, the case made headlines again, not because of the verdict, but because of what it represented. A new wave of cold cases across the country began reopening. Old bones, forgotten evidence, all re-examined with modern DNA tech. Aaron's lab received hundreds of new submissions. Tom was invited to speak at a press conference about the impact of the Silva case. Cameras flashed as he stepped to the podium. He looked out at the crowd and said, "This case isn't about a body in a canal. It's about what happens when we refuse to stop listening, when we keep asking the hard questions, even after the world stops caring." Science gave Velma her name, but love gave her justice. The room was silent. He stepped down, knowing he'd said everything he needed to. That night, Maria sat on her porch, the sound of crickets filling the air. She looked up at the stars and whispered, "Sleep easy, my girl." And for the first time in 12 years, the night felt peaceful. The canal was quiet. The storm had passed. But deep in its depths, beneath the still waters, the truth lingered. A reminder that justice may take time, but it never forgets. For more chilling true crime stories, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel.